I was at home when my dad said, "We're giving you up for adoption." "Dad, what do you mean? What are you talking about?" "A lawyer called," he said quietly. "Your biological father is petitioning for custody. He says now that your mom is gone, he wants to be in your life." I didn't even know what to say because I had never met this man, like ever. He left before I was even born, and the only reason I even knew his name was because my mom mentioned it one time during a conversation she didn't know I was listening to. My dad had been in my life since I was 11 months old. He married my mom when I was 3, and he was the one who carried me on his shoulders at the county fair every summer and sat in the hallway outside my bedroom door reading a book out loud when I was scared of thunderstorms. He was the one who cried at every single one of my dance recitals and burned pancakes every Saturday morning because he always got distracted watching cartoons with me instead of watching the stove. I had never once in my entire life called him anything other than Dad because that's what he was. "Can he actually take me?" I asked, and my dad looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, like he was trying to be brave but completely failing at it. "My lawyer says it's complicated," he said. "Without your mom here, my legal standing isn't as strong as it used to be. He's the biological parent. I'm technically the step-parent." That word hit me like a truck because he had never been a step anything to me, and hearing him call himself that felt like watching someone erase 15 years of my life with one sentence. The court ordered a supervised visit before the custody hearing, so I had to sit across from my biological father in a conference room at the courthouse while a social worker watched us from a chair in the corner. He showed up wearing a suit that probably cost more than my dad's car, and he had a leather briefcase and a legal pad, like he was running a job interview instead of meeting his daughter for the first time. He didn't say sorry. He didn't say he missed me. He didn't even say hi. He opened the legal pad, clicked his pen, and just started firing questions at me like I was applying for a job at his company. "What does your house look like?" he asked. "How? Many bedrooms? Do you share a bathroom?" I told him we had a 3-bedroom house and that I had my own room, and he wrote something down without even looking up. "Does your stepfather cook for you regularly, or do you eat out a lot?" he asked. And I corrected him and said my dad cooked for me every night because he did. He didn't even acknowledge that I corrected him. He just kept writing and asking stuff like whether my dad had ever raised his voice at me, whether there were other adults in the house, whether I'd ever seen him drink. Every single question felt like he was building a case against the only parent I had left, and the social worker just sat there taking her own notes without saying a word. When the hour was up, he closed his legal pad and stood up and told me he'd see me at the hearing. He didn't hug me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He shook my hand like I was someone he'd met at a work event and walked out of the room without looking back. I sat there for a long time after he left because I couldn't figure out how someone who shared my blood could feel like a complete stranger, while the man who wasn't related to me at all felt like the safest person in the world. Things got worse after that. My biological father's lawyer sent paperwork to the court listing all these reasons why custody should be transferred, and my dad's lawyer called us into her office to go over it. The filing said my dad's income was too low to provide adequate childcare in our county. It said the house needed repairs. It said that as a step-parent with no biological connection and no formal adoption, his claim was secondary to a living biological parent. My dad sat in that lawyer's office and didn't say a single word the whole time she was reading it, but I could see his jaw clenching so hard I thought his teeth were going to crack. "He's also bringing character witnesses," his lawyer said. "A colleague, a pastor from his church, and a financial advisor who's going to testify that he can provide a more stable environment." My dad finally spoke up and asked what we had, and his lawyer paused for a second too long before answering. "We have you," she said. "We have your history with her, but I need you to understand that family courts prioritize biological parents, especially when there's no formal adoption on record." I found out later that the reason my dad never formally adopted me was because my biological father had never signed away his rights, and my mom had been trying to track him down for years to get that signature. She never found him. Now he had found us. The weeks before the hearing were the worst of my entire life. My dad stopped eating proper meals and started falling asleep at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and folders and old photos he was putting together as evidence. I walked downstairs one night at like 3 in the morning to get water and found him sitting on the kitchen floor with a box of my old school projects and drawings spread out around him, holding a Mother's Day card I made in 2nd grade where I'd written, "Thank you for giving me the best dad ever," in crooked purple marker. He was just sitting there staring at it like it was the only thing keeping him going. He didn't know I was watching, and I went back upstairs without saying anything because I didn't want him to have to pretend he was okay for my sake. His lawyer called 2 days before the hearing and told him to prepare himself because the judge assigned to our case was known for siding with biological parents in custody fights. "That doesn't mean we've lost," she said, but her voice didn't sound like she believed it. My dad thanked her and hung up and then drove to the store and bought all the ingredients for my mom's lasagna recipe and spent 4 hours making it from scratch because that was the only way he knew how to deal with anything. We ate it together at the kitchen table, and neither of us said a word about what was coming. My aunt came over the night before the hearing and pulled me aside while my dad was in the other room and told me I needed to start preparing myself for the chance that things might not go our way. "Your dad loves you more than anything," she said, "but sometimes love isn't enough in a courtroom, and you need to be ready for that." I told her that was the worst thing anyone had ever said to me, and she hugged me and said she was sorry, but she didn't want me to be blindsided. I barely slept that night because every time I closed my eyes, I kept picturing a stranger driving me away from the only home I'd ever known. The morning of the hearing, I put on the nicest outfit I had, and my dad wore a tie I recognized from my mom's funeral because it was the only one he owned. We drove to the courthouse without talking because there was nothing either of us could say that would make it better. His lawyer met us in the lobby and went over the plan one more time and told us to stay calm no matter what happened in there. We sat on a bench outside the courtroom for almost 40 minutes before they called us in, and I watched my biological father show up with 2 lawyers and 3 people I'd never seen before, who I figured were his character witnesses. He walked right past us without even looking at us. My dad reached over and squeezed my hand so hard it almost hurt. "No matter what happens in that room," he said, "you are my daughter. You have been my daughter since the first time I held you, and no judge and no piece of paper is ever going to change that." But we both knew that was exactly what a judge and a piece of paper could do. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, and the judge was an older woman with glasses who didn't smile at anyone when we walked in. My dad's lawyer gave her opening statement about 15 years of care and bonding and an established parental relationship, and my biological father's lawyer gave his opening statement about the rights of biological parents and how important important genetic connection is to a child's development. Then the judge called my biological father to the stand, and I watched him walk up there looking polished and confident and completely in control, while my dad sat next to me gripping the arms of his chair. The judge asked him to state his name and his relationship to me for the record, and he did. Then she asked him to explain in his own words why he was here today and what he wanted from this court. He looked at the judge for a second, then he turned and looked right at me. Then he looked at my dad. "I'm here to permanently surrender my parental rights," he said, and the entire courtroom went dead silent. The judge asked him to say that again, and he nodded and said it again perfectly clear. "I am here to voluntarily and permanently give up all of my parental rights so that this man can legally adopt my biological daughter." His own lawyers looked at each other like they had absolutely no idea this was coming. The judge leaned forward and asked him to explain, and he took a breath and kept going. 13 years ago, I found out I had a daughter, and I told myself I'd come back when I was ready. I was never going to be ready because I was never supposed to be her father. Someone else already was. He looked at my dad again, and this time his voice actually cracked. "I filed this petition because I needed to know who was raising my kid. I needed to see for myself. I asked every question I could think of at that supervised visit because I needed to know she was safe and loved and taken care of by someone who deserved her. And then I watched this man spend 2 months destroying himself, trying to keep a child that should have been legally his a long time ago." He turned back to the judge. "I have sat across from my biological daughter one time in my life, and in that 1 hour, I learned more about who her real father is than I ever could have learned about myself. The man sitting in that courtroom has been her parent every single day for 15 years. I am nothing but a name." She had to look up because her mother never even told her who I was. "I'm not here to take anyone's daughter. I'm here to make sure no one can ever try to take her from him again, including me." My dad completely lost it the second I looked at him. He pressed both hands over his face and his shoulders were shaking, and the folder of evidence he'd spent weeks putting together just sat there untouched on the table in front of him because he was never going to need any of it.